everyone. So I'm stepping into a presentation that's normally given by one of the founders of Gnosis. So I'm stepping into very large shoes. I will ask for your patience and your kindness today. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with Gnosis to some degree. Maybe you know Safe. You may know that the same team also built CalSwap. You may be familiar with Gnosis Chain. I joined Gnosis 6 months ago as head of marketing. And for me, the most exciting thing was that combination of a project that has a really strong pedigree as technical builders, that fundamentally is not just in it for the tech. You know, it was never just about the tech, it was always about what the tech enabled. And for the last decade, they've been putting that into practice in the products that they've built. It's always been built with values at the heart, so with self-custody embedded, with decentralization front of mind, and yet they've also been beautiful products that work really well. And right now, as we stand here in Lisbon in 2026, it feels almost inevitable that this is the year that blockchain becomes completely mainstream, that it has that moment, right? But it does not yet feel inevitable, at least to me, that our values are taken alongside our technology. I know there's a lot of people talking about that these days, and this is something that, you know, that we hold very dear, and it's fundamentally what I want to base this talk on. It's this idea of, you know, we didn't come here to replicate the status quo. We didn't come here to build another on-chain neobank. We came here to fork banks and build something better, build what comes after banks. And my clicker is not working. There we go. And I think at its heart, like, one of the big challenges we've been trying to face is, how do you talk to people about this? Like, we know how to talk to degens about this. We know how to talk to crypto people about this. But you go out and try to tell your cousin over Christmas dinner about Web3, and you use terms like decentralization, incredible neutrality, or censorship resistance. And I mean, you notice the eyes glaze over and they're kind of looking over your shoulder pretty quickly. One of the things we've really spent a lot of time thinking about is, how do we boil this down into simple mimetic concepts that are mainstream? And at the heart of that is this theme of power. Is a theme of power, agency, ownership. And it seems probably logical to most of us that that's something that you would want. The reality is, actually, this idea of ownership is not something that I think universally people recognize that they want. It kind of actually feels heavy. It feels full of responsibility. You know, if I have ownership of my assets, and if I lose my keys, I lose my assets. You know, there's something frictionless and easy, there's something very convenient about surrendering power. And actually, if you think about what ownership means, I think the way we feel about it actually depends a lot. Has anybody read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or familiar with that concept? The social environment that we're brought up in shapes how we view the world and how we think about some of these principles. And if we think about the concept of ownership, that's super true. So if you look at ownership through the lens of social structure, poor people own money, if you're lucky. Middle classes, we start to own our houses, we own real estate. The upper socioeconomic groups, they own the systems that extract the value from all the rest of us. You know, they own the companies, they own the financial instruments, they own the rails. And actually, if you look at ownership through the lens of time, you see something really interesting as well. We didn't always have it. It wasn't something, it's a relatively new thing, actually, for us to have ownership. Like, it's only in the mid-2000s that we started, you know, these little lines down at the bottom started to blip up a little bit, and we started to get more ownership, more agency. And actually, for the last couple of decades, we've been losing it. And that's continuing. We are in the process of losing the little ownership that we had. And, you know, I have my dystopian moments where I feel like I gaze into the abyss a bit too long. I think this concept of ownership and agency and the stuff that we have been working on in this space is going to be more pivotal than ever over the coming months and years. So let's look at how we lost it through the digital lens. Well, we used to buy our software. Now we license it. It used to be ours, we got it on a disk, we had it, now we have it for limited periods under agreements. We used to own music. I had a big debate with my children actually this Christmas. Like they want music. It's not unreasonable. They're kids, right? I didn't want an Alexa device in their bedrooms because I didn't want them forming relationships with AI in that way through the chat interface. I am uncomfortable with something listening in their bedrooms all the time. I wanted to run for the hills when I heard my little 8-year-old girl saying, "Alexa, do you love me?" So we went down this route and looked at MP3 players, and I spent time on Spotify, and actually I've gone back to ownership. We're buying CDs. We're going back to the Stone Ages because we've given up so much. We don't own our music. We don't own our books. If I have a book I really like, I can't lend it to my friends. Everything is on platforms that can be taken from us. If we look at the evolution of cloud and SaaS, amazing, massively transformative in terms of UX, very frictionless. But again, all your data lives in someone else's server. And every now and then you hear these hideous stories of people losing access, of the gatekeepers closing the gates. The platform era from the 2010s, our digital self. And our digital self, you talk to a Gen Z about what that means to them, and it is everything. It is life, and it is not ours anymore. If you don't pay for the platform, for the product, you are the product. We rent our identity from Meta, from Google, from Apple. We rent our audience. If they decide that they don't like what we're saying, they'll cull us. If we express views they don't like, they'll cull us. There was a piece that was shared just yesterday, I think, that, in Twitter at the moment, if you post pro-US content, you get a boost. If you post pro-European content, you get smashed. There are forces that are shaping the way that people see the world. And actually the power to do that is getting into fewer and fewer hands. And deplatforming is real. This isn't just conspiracy theorists sitting with their tinfoil hats on. This is real. It happens. As platforms and individual platforms get more and more power, it's going to happen in a bigger way. When you start to see, anybody that's been playing around with AI, which is probably everyone I'm guessing, it's going to have a massive impact on people's work performance. What if they suddenly introduce license fees, and unless you're employed in a company, you can't access it? Your work ability gets smashed. Right now, it's a superpower for entrepreneurs. But it's a huge amount of power to trust. I can't look at Sam Altman without wanting to punch him. It's a weakness. It's a huge amount of power to trust to the technocrats. And Web3 was supposed to be something else, right? It was supposed to be about ownership. It was supposed to be about power that flows to you, not from you. It was supposed to be about profit flowing to you, not from you, to kind of make a break from these extractive systems. That's why we sit in Discord servers. That's why we probably participated in DAOs. We hold our ENS handles. We show up on Twitter Spaces. We show up at conferences. And we had some amazing stuff. We introduced self-custody. For ages, to make our money spendable and accessible, we had to entrust it to banks. Now suddenly we could custody it ourselves. We had open money. We weren't reliant on the kind of private systems and bank ledgers, the gatekeepers that could deplatform us or debank us if we fell foul. We had assets that were interoperable. We had composability. We had this, world of 1,000 flowers. Break out of the walled gardens. We've done so much. We've built so much. And somewhere along the way, what happened? We have this trade-off that we have to figure out between the values that brought us here and adoption. And I think very often people have been able to come in and take the technology that we've been building and make compromises that at their worst will completely remove the values that started it. We've talked about progressive decentralization. We've moved into more self-custodied super apps. With custodial super apps. We've got our open rails are being challenged. You know, wallets are turning into neobanks. It feels like my feed has been, for the last 4 or 5 months, like just a never-ending onslaught of new on-chain neobanks. I don't want a neobank. You know, I don't want another Revolut. You know, we weren't here to kind of replicate existing power structures, and fundamentally, this is something that Frederica normally says, if Web3 just becomes new plumbing for old power, then, like, did we win? A blockchain without ownership is just a bad database. A wallet without keys is just a fintech app. And a chain governed by a few is Web2 with gas fees. We either build rails that users own or rails that own users. We either build something different. We do something more disruptive, more interesting than recreating the status quo on chain, or we become part of the extractive system that we came to break. We are stepping up to fight that at Gnosis. I am very proud to be part of an organization that has the treasury to take this battle on, that has the chops as builders to take this on. We are rolling all of our own tools into a consumer app that we launched in Dublin just before Christmas. We already have over 1,000 daily active users in a private beta. We are going onto the streets. We are talking to young people. We're embracing user research. We're building a grassroots community. We onboarded our first growth associate from the student communities. We're stepping up. We're doing our bit in the front lines. We're also here to power everybody with all the same stuff that's enabling us to do that. So we have plug-and-play card infrastructure with Gnosis Pay. We have aggregated on and off ramps, aggregated local stablecoins on Gnosis Chain, and we're ramping that up as quickly as we possibly can. We have the chain itself, which is an EVM chain. It has, you know, we managed to maintain 4 Ethereum clients. We have a network of validators. It costs very little to be a home validator. It's a very decentralized open system. On a structure where we walk the walk, that we don't serve 2 masters at Gnosis. We don't have equity owners that we're optimizing for. We serve our token holders. All value accrues to the token, all profit flows back to the token. There's no new take, there's no conflict of interest. So fundamentally, come, build with us. If we can help you, if you want to do something more interesting than replicating what already exists on new rails, then come talk to us. We are growing the ecosystem. We have tools and products that can support you on your journey. Fork banks. Bank on Gnosis. Thank you for your time.